I used to think the ocean air could clean a man's conscience, that if you breathed it long enough, it would strip the weight off your chest, leave you hollow and clean. I was wrong. It only makes the silence heavier, the kind that presses against the walls until every small sound feels like it's listening. I moved to this house 3 months ago, a one-story place near the docks, where the fog rolls in before dusk and the gulls cry like things being forgiven. I told myself I needed distance, from people, from the city, from what happened that night. But distance is only geography. Guilt travels light. Every evening I sit by the window with a mug of coffee I never finish. I watch the streetlight outside flicker, the same pulse every few seconds, like it's trying to remember how to stay alive. There's comfort in small, predictable things. The smell of salt, the creak of the porch, the low hum of the refrigerator pretending to be company. I still check my phone sometimes out of habit. There are no new messages, just old ones from Daniel. Jokes, half-finished plans, a photo of the two of us in the ambulance, still in uniform, smiling like men who thought they could save anyone. He used to knock 3 times on my door whenever he came over. Sharp, familiar. "You home, Mike?" The funeral felt unreal. I stood near the back because I didn't know how to face his mother. She thanked me for being there, said Daniel always trusted me. Her eyes were soft, forgiving. I couldn't stand it. Nights are long here. Too quiet. I keep the porch light on, even when I sleep, though I tell myself it's for safety. Sometimes I wake up to the sound of wind pressing against the siding, like someone testing the edges of the house. It's nothing, I tell myself, just the sea breathing. But last night, for the first time since the accident, I dreamed of him. He was standing outside my door, soaked, his hair plastered to his face. When I woke, I could still hear it. 3 knocks, slow, patient, familiar. I didn't get up, not yet. If stories like this find you when you need them, don't disappear. Subscribe to the channel and stay close. I have more truths to share. The first night it happened, I told myself it was the wind. That's what guilt does. It writes explanations before the question can form. I'd been sitting by the window again. The same routine. Coffee, cigarette, the hum of the refrigerator pretending to be a heartbeat. Outside, the fog was thick enough to blur the world into suggestion. Then came the knock. 3 times. Steady. Familiar. At first I didn't move. It felt wrong to. I just stared at the door, at the dull halo cast by the porch light trembling against the mist. The sound had been so real, sharp enough to cut through the quiet, too deliberate to be random. But when I finally gathered the courage to open it, there was nothing waiting for me. Just the smell of wet salt and the distant groan of the tide pulling itself across the rocks. I stood there longer than I should have, letting the cold seep into my bones. The air felt thick, like it had been disturbed and hadn't yet settled back into place. I whispered his name once, not because I believed he was there, but because saying it out loud made him feel less gone. My voice didn't echo. It disappeared, swallowed by the fog. The next morning, I found footprints on the porch. They weren't clear, just faint outlines in the thin film of salt that settles overnight. Too large to be mine, too real to dismiss. I knelt and traced one with my finger, the way you'd touch something fragile, sacred or forbidden. The wood beneath was damp but warm, as if it had just been stepped on. That night, I left the porch light off. I thought maybe if I stopped waiting, whatever it was would stop coming. But the dark has its own appetite. Around 2:17 a.m., I woke to the same rhythm. 3 knocks, patient as breathing. My heart stumbled. There was no light this time, only the sound. Softer now, almost tender, like a memory learning how to repeat itself. I didn't open the door. Instead, I pressed my ear against it. The wood was cold, but I could swear I heard something on the other side. Not movement, not whispering, just a slow inhale, as if the night itself was drawing breath. When I exhaled, it matched me. The following days blurred together. I started noticing small changes. The smell of Daniel's aftershave in the hallway, the sound of keys clinking in the bowl even when I hadn't left the house, the way the mirror in the bathroom fogged over by itself. Once, I thought I heard his voice from the kitchen. Low, casual, the way he'd call me Mike when he wanted me to stop overthinking. I froze halfway down the hall, waiting for it to happen again. It didn't. People in town began to notice I wasn't sleeping. The clerk at the diner asked if I was working nights again. I almost laughed. I told her no, I just liked the quiet. She said, "Quiet's good until it starts talking back." I didn't go back there after that. By the fifth night, the knocks came earlier, just after midnight. I didn't even pretend to ignore them this time. I sat on the couch, staring at the door, waiting for them, like a man waiting for judgment. When they finally came, I whispered, "I'm sorry." It felt foolish, but the air seemed to shift, as if something outside had been waiting to hear those words. The house exhaled, and somewhere deep in its wooden frame, something creaked in reply. I told myself I was losing it. That isolation and grief had twisted into hallucination. Still, I couldn't shake the sense that there was intention behind every sound. Guilt is clever. It finds a way to speak in the voice you miss most. That night, I dreamt again. Daniel stood at the foot of my bed, dripping seawater onto the floorboards. His face was calm, almost kind. "You left me," he said. Not accusing, just stating it, like a paramedic calling time of death. When I woke, the bed sheets were damp, and outside the window, the porch light had burned itself out. I replaced it the next morning, though I can't explain why. Maybe some part of me still believed light could keep the dead at a distance. Or maybe I wanted him to find his way back. Because by then, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was listening. If this story touched something inside you, leave a... Not for me, but for the next person who's looking for a reason to stay. The days stopped meaning much after that. I slept in fragments, 20 minutes here, an hour there, always waking to the faint echo of knuckles on wood. It wasn't every night anymore. It was worse. It came when I least expected it. A single knock during breakfast. 2 soft ones while I was brushing my teeth. Sometimes I'd hear it from the wrong side of the house, where no door existed. The sound followed rhythm, memory, and guilt, not walls. I started keeping notes, the way I used to record patient vitals. Time, duration, intensity. But this was different. The knocks weren't random. They were responding. When I whispered something into the air, an apology, a question, a plea, the next sound would come exactly in sync with my breath. It felt attentive. I told myself it was my mind seeking pattern in chaos, the same way grief invents miracles to survive itself. Yet deep down, I knew the rhythm too well. Daniel had a habit of tapping his fingers against the dashboard when we drove at night. 3 quick taps, then silence. He said it helped him stay awake. I used to tease him for it. Now, the same pattern haunted my door like a lullaby turned warning. By the second week, the house began to shift around me. The floorboards moaned differently. The refrigerator hummed in a lower tone. Even the air felt charged, like static before lightning. I'd catch glimpses in the reflection of the kitchen window. Not figures exactly, but movements that shouldn't exist when I was standing still. One night I sat at the table and spoke to him. Out loud this time. "Daniel," I said, my voice trembling. "If you're there, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Before I could finish, 3 knocks answered from behind me. Not from the door, but from inside the wall. Close. Too close. I froze. My pulse climbed into my throat. Then slowly the sound moved along the wall, a dragging rhythm, as if knuckles were tracing the outline of the room. It stopped beside the window, where the light from the porch flickered weakly through the fog. I turned toward it, expecting anything, but all I saw was my own reflection. Pale, hollow-eyed, my lips parted as if the glass had stolen my breath. When the reflection blinked, I hadn't. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair. My breath came in shallow bursts, the kind you learn to recognize before a panic attack. But instead of collapsing, I found myself whispering again. "What do you want?" No answer. Just the slow, fading hum of the porch bulb struggling to stay alive. The next morning, I found the hallway mirror cracked. A single fracture running across it like a lifeline drawn by an unsteady hand. I couldn't remember breaking it. When I touched the glass, it was cold but wet, as if condensation had formed only on that line. The days blurred further. I stopped checking the mail, stopped eating properly. My world shrank to the distance between me and the door. Sometimes I'd sit there for hours, waiting for the knock, hating myself when it didn't come. There was comfort in repetition, in knowing the guilt still wanted to be heard. Then, on the 11th night, the sound changed. It wasn't a knock this time, but a scraping, slow, deliberate, circling the frame. I thought of fingernails, but no, it was rougher, like bone against wood. I whispered, "Daniel, please," though I wasn't sure if I wanted it to stop or continue. The scraping paused. Then came a single deep knock, one that shook the floor beneath me. I don't know why, but I smiled. Maybe because it felt like recognition, like forgiveness arriving in the only language we had left. Later, I found something written on the condensation of the window. Just one word, "Stay." The handwriting was his. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with the lights off, the house pulsing faintly around me. The fog pressed close, and in it I thought I saw movement. A silhouette pacing the porch, head tilted, patient as always. Every few minutes the boards creaked beneath invisible weight. I wanted to open the door, not out of courage, but exhaustion. Maybe this was how you confess to the dead, by finally letting them in. I whispered his name again, and for the first time, the house whispered it back. The night it finally happened, there was no fog. The air was strangely clear, sharp as glass. I remember because the stars looked close enough to touch, as if the world had been holding its breath, waiting for something to break. I hadn't slept in 2 days. My body felt hollow, my thoughts a loop of knocks and apologies. The word on the window, "Stay," hadn't faded. I stopped wiping it away. That evening I left the porch light off on purpose. I wanted to know if he would still come when I wasn't calling him. I sat on the floor beside the door, knees drawn up, the quiet pressing in like water. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have, the sound of time mocking the living. Then, at exactly midnight, the first knock came. Not 3 this time, just 1. It wasn't loud, but it was heavy, like a hand that knew exactly where to find me. I didn't hesitate. I stood, unlocked the door, and pulled it open. No one, just the night, raw and infinite. The wind stirred, lifting the smell of salt and pine. The porch boards groaned softly under nothing. And yet, I felt it. The presence, the air bending around something unseen, the same way it bends around heat. "Daniel," I whispered. The darkness seemed to pulse once, like a slow heartbeat. Then came the second knock, from behind me. I turned, and every light in the house flickered. The bulbs hissed, flared, then dimmed to a trembling glow. The sound came again, closer now, echoing through the walls, the ceiling, the floor. The whole house became a chest, and I was standing inside its lungs. I tried to speak, but my throat locked. And then, through the wavering light, I saw him. Not clearly, not the way I'd seen him in life. It was more like the outline of a memory made visible, a distortion in the air that carried the weight of recognition. His shape flickered where the shadow met the light, the faintest suggestion of a face I'd memorized in another lifetime. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even whole. He just looked disappointed. I took a step toward him, trembling. "I didn't mean to leave you," I said. "You know that, don't you? You told me to get out of the car." The shape tilted its head as if listening. Then the walls started knocking, one by one, in that same 3-beat rhythm. Every room answered, every corner of the house remembering him. And then, his voice, low, fragile, close to my ear. "You left me alone, Mike." I fell to my knees. The sound of it filled me, not as sound, but as pressure, like grief solidified. I tried, I tried, but even as I said it, the truth rose up in me like bile. I hadn't tried enough. I'd frozen. The guilt I'd been nursing for months wasn't from what I couldn't do, but from what I hadn't done. The night he died, he'd been trapped, reaching for me. And I couldn't look at him. I turned away. The house went silent, completely silent. Even the sea outside stopped breathing. Then, slowly, a handprint appeared on the inside of the door, not pressed from outside, but from within, as though it had been waiting all along. The fingers were long, familiar, trembling slightly, as if they were afraid too. I reached out and placed my hand against it. The wood was cold at first, then the kind of warmth that hurts. I closed my eyes, and for a moment it felt like he was there, standing behind me the way he used to when we'd wait for the call tones to drop. "I know," I whispered. "It should have been me." The warmth pulsed once, then faded. When I opened my eyes, the handprint was gone. The light steadied. The night returned to its ordinary quiet, but the house wasn't empty anymore. I could feel him. Not outside, not haunting, but inside. Not his presence, but his truth. The knocks didn't come again after that. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was absolute, a kind of peace I didn't think I deserved. Still, some nights when I pass by the door, I catch myself raising my hand, waiting for the wood to answer. It never does, but I can almost hear him breathing on the other side. Patient, eternal, forgiven. It's been 3 years since the last knock. 3 winters by the sea, and I've learned that silence doesn't mean absence. It means understanding. The house still creaks the same. The fog still rolls in like it's searching for something, and I still sit by the same window every evening. But the air feels different now, lighter somehow, as if the walls themselves have stopped holding their breath. I didn't sell the place. I thought I would. For a long time, I couldn't even look at the door without feeling that old pressure in my chest. But with time, I realized leaving wouldn't help. The guilt doesn't stay behind when you pack. It follows you in smaller forms, in reflections, in dreams, in the way light bends at certain hours. So I stayed. Maybe because part of me believed that Daniel would stay too. People in town have stopped asking questions. They've gotten used to me. The quiet man at the end of Harbor Road who buys coffee before dawn and speaks to no one. They call me polite, soft-spoken, maybe a little haunted. They don't know how right they are. I still work sometimes here and there, helping at the local clinic when they need extra hands. I don't go on calls anymore. I can't. I tried once, but when the radio crackled, my body froze. The sound took me back to that night. The wet pavement, the taste of smoke, the silence after the impact. It wasn't fear that stopped me. It was memory. Memory has its own pulse, its own heartbeat, and mine still beats for him. The first spring after it happened, I found something strange on the porch. A seashell, small and white, lying exactly where the handprint used to appear. I hadn't seen anyone pass by, and the tide was miles away. I picked it up, turned it over in my palm, and felt the faint groove of 3 small ridges along its edge. The same rhythm, 3 beats, quiet as breath. I keep it on the table by the window now. Not as proof, but as reminder. Sometimes at night I talk to him, not like before, not pleading, not broken, but in the soft way you'd talk to an old friend sitting across from you in the dark. I tell him about the weather, about the fishermen arguing at the docks, about how the sea looks bruised before a storm. I tell him I'm sorry, still, but I also tell him thank you, because I understand now. He wasn't knocking to accuse me. He was knocking to remind me that what binds us doesn't end in the crash. It echoes until we learn to answer it. His knocking wasn't the haunting. My silence was. Last winter, during one of the heaviest storms, the power went out for 3 days. I lit candles, listened to the wind tear through the town, and felt strangely calm. There was no fear, only the rhythm of rain against the glass. On the second night, I heard it, faint, distant, almost lost in the weather. 3 soft knocks. I didn't rush to the door this time. I just sat, eyes closed, and whispered, "I'm here." The sound stopped. The storm quieted. The air grew warm, and I smelled his cologne again. Faint, medicinal, familiar. When I opened my eyes, the candle flames had gone still, perfectly vertical, like they were holding their breath in reverence. Since then, I haven't heard from him again. And maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't a conversation. It's a returning, a quiet acceptance that the dead don't need us to keep suffering for them. They need us to remember them without pain. Now, when I walk by the sea, I look at the horizon and think of how far sound travels over water, how a single voice, if carried right, can reach miles away before fading. Maybe that's all life is. One long echo, waiting for someone to listen. I've stopped fearing the door. Sometimes I even leave it open when the weather's good. The breeze moves through the house gently, touching everything like a ghost that finally learned tenderness. The light flickers at dusk, but it no longer feels like a warning, more like a heartbeat, steady and alive. I still keep his photo on the mantel. We look impossibly young in it, laughing at something I can't even remember. When the evening light hits the glass, his reflection overlaps mine. For a moment, we look whole again. I don't know if he forgave me, not really. Maybe that was never the point. Maybe what came to my door wasn't Daniel at all, but the part of myself I buried with him. The part that still believed I could save someone, even if it meant breaking in the process. The sea outside whispers every night. A low, endless rhythm that sounds almost like knocking. Sometimes I catch myself listening, waiting for the pause between each wave. That fragile silence that feels like it's about to say something. But it never does. It doesn't need to. Because I already understand. He never followed me home. He was already here. If stories like this find you when you need them, don't disappear. Subscribe to the channel and stay close. I have more truths to share.